So thank you for coming today. This is our first in a series of webinars that Sally Purcell and I are going to co-host on professional staff with a PhD. And we understand this may be an area that's not probably well explored. May lead to a further development, you know, with another program we're thinking down the line. But we thought this is a great way of starting to explore this area of careers for PhDs who are looking at an area that is not strictly research post-PhD, but it's very much using the skill set that's learned or you know, utilized and developed during your PhD. So let me just see. So I'm Catherine Ennis. I'm the HDR Industry Engagement and Placements Manager. Maybe we'll just do a little intro. Sally, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, we tend to assume everyone knows who we are because we send these things out. So yeah, my name's Sally Purcell. So I look after the HDR professional skills. So Catherine and I work in tandem. So we're all about really building opportunities and for people to reflect on their skills and look at gaps where they might build some skills or experience and how to actually translate that for different audiences depending on whether you're looking at an academic role or other sectors. So that's sort of in a nutshell what we do, and we do a whole range of things around that. And, you know, I've got a podcast. There's some career stories we already have on the iLearn site, so we can send that out to you if you don't already have access to that iLearn site, because we put a lot of resources into that. So yeah, that's pretty much what we do. And then we work within the HDR support and development team, which, you know, Juliet's joined us today, and there are other people in that team, the HDR mentors, as well as the learning advisor and the faculty. So please take advantage of all those opportunities that are provided to you while you're here, because they are free. And if you had to pay for these things outside, they would cost you a pretty penny. So, you know, we'll do what we can for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd like to also kindly welcome Dr. Gorjana Mitic. Dr. Gorjana Mitic, would you like to, I'm giving you a very full title there. Thank you for being the first in our series of webinars with professional staff with a PhD. Would you like to maybe give yourself a little introduction?
Sure, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to participate in this and I'm pleased to see the interest in this topic. I think it's very important to position yourself during your PhD, you know, gain some extra skills and really find that career path that's suitable for you. And I think you can really get some really amazing help from Catherine and Sally. So make sure you use these amazing resources. I am the Commercialization and Innovation Manager for Life Sciences at the Office of Commercialization and Innovation. My background was in biotech, and I did honors in biochemistry and molecular biology. I then pursued a PhD, and we will talk more about the career path later in the webinar. My PhD was in brain cancer research. And after my PhD, I actually went into consulting for business development and licensing, still very close to science, just a different perspective, I guess, in different parts of commercialization and from discovery to development. And now I'm here at Macquarie. I've been here for 2.5 years.
Thanks, Gorjana. I know you're going to give us a few slides. And just before that, I will do our acknowledgement of country. And I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Macquarie University land. I'm living in Ryde, so I'm still in the Guatemala clan of the Darug Nation, whose cultures and customs have nurtured and continue to nurture this land since the dream time. We pay our respects to elders past, present and future. So without further ado, Gorjana, would you like to share your screen?
Yes.
And we'll go from there. And then I suppose just generally to let everybody know, we'll do this. Gorjana is going to give us more of an exploration into her role, her current role, and then we'll do some Q&A, and then there'll be a chance for some Q&A towards the end as well. So over to you, Gorjana.
Great, thank you very much. So about my current role, I would describe it as very dynamic, and there is never a dull moment. probably describes the role quite well. What we do is I work closely with academics from life sciences and medicine, and I assess their innovations, their new technologies, discoveries, and I help them, I facilitate a translation of that innovation, assess for commercial potential, and facilitate partnerships or licensing. So really looking for our commercial outcomes and making an impact with that innovation. That is a big process, and you can see on this slide, which describes what our office does and what we do from the beginning till the end. There are many aspects of this work, and I will quickly describe some of these for you, just to get you a taste of what it is and what I do. And I will incorporate some of what a typical day may look like. You can imagine that I have to handle multiple projects at the same time. They all come from different research areas, very, very different topics, can range from optical probes, devices, nanoparticles, antibodies, therapeutic drugs, fruit flies, genetically modified crops. So very, very broad. And I have to quickly switch from one topic to another and very fast read reviews and get on top of it very, very quickly. And I think PhD equips you for this aspect of the job. It all starts with me really assessing the technology, defining what is the core opportunity. Sometimes it may not be the part that you intended, but there may be a very good application in a different field. I work closely with researchers to understand that, to understand how they got there, really look into their data, which I really love that part, because that's the part that connects me back to science, which I still very much enjoy. And I still love looking at complex graphs and data and how you analyze it and what it actually means. So that part of sort of assessment, I find amazing, and really talking to researchers. You can also imagine that having a PhD and being able to understand the complexities of science and also the challenges, it helps to talk to researchers where you can appreciate how difficult it is to go back to the lab and just do one more run. If I didn't have that appreciation, I would probably just give them a to-do list and send them back to the lab without understanding how hard that is. When you have that appreciation, you really build a connection and you understand what it means to do this research and how hard it is. When I build that connection, we look at the competitive landscape as well. I sort of change the perspective from sort of grant writing and what are your colleagues doing in the field to what is the industry doing, what is their problem that they need to solve. So changing the direction of the research perspective, we ask the question of how is what you do unique? What is the value proposition? What is the actual problem you're solving? Let's talk to industry, see what problems they have. What are the other capabilities that are in the lab that industry may be interested in that you don't really find particularly unique and valuable because you are doing it, but there may be something very cool that has been developed in the lab and some very, very unique capabilities. If I determine that a project is patentable and there is commercial potential, then we go into that sort of commercialization, translation part, where I work closely with attorneys to work on the patent strategy and see what we can claim, determine when is the best time to file a patent. What is your plan about publications? Are you really desperate to publish, which we completely understand? Or can we wait a little bit? Is there anything that you can not disclose for a while and maybe take it out of the paper? Once we have a patent in place, the clock starts ticking in terms of finding a partner. And then I engage very closely with researchers. We look for partners. We have lots of calls. We have to prepare summaries of the data. And these are different kinds of documents. So I help you with that because I know what industry is looking for, to define your value proposition and present your data in a very, very different way from what a grant application would look like. I work closely with researchers on that. And then really the final outcome is the win. That could be in the form of a license, in the form of a spin-out, maybe a research collaboration that is funded that then leads into a license. It could be a co-development where the IP does not exist yet, but the capabilities are aligned and there is something that you can develop together with the partner. And there are many other outcomes of this that are sort of not so visible, and these are the benefits for you during this process. That sort of brings me to the next topic of the challenges and rewards of this job. In terms of challenges, I would say that I wish I had more time to really give everyone enough attention. It's a big university and a tiny, tiny office. So my challenge is to really spend enough time on each project and really give them my full attention. All of these tasks you can see on this slide are very time consuming, require a lot of focus. You have to be thorough. You really have to be very detailed and do it carefully. So the challenge is really giving that full attention to every project because they all deserve that. That's my biggest challenge. The other challenge is that patent clock that starts ticking, and the best practice for universities is not to, I keep it less technical, file a patent in specific countries after 18 months because these are large costs and the universities often don't go that way unless we have a partner. So the time for me to find a partner is limited, which is actually very challenging, and industry with big budgets don't have this problem. Whereas at the university, unfortunately, there's a time limit, and that is the second biggest challenge for me in this role. The rewards are, there are so many. I really like when I see that I added value to the project and to researchers. It's a big reward to see that I've created an opportunity, I've connected them with a company, and they've learned from their feedback. And of course, the other big rewards are, to see a deal happen. Of course, there is a collaboration, or a company creates, researchers create a startup, there's a co-development. These are sort of on a larger scale outcomes. But what I find really rewarding is adding value, helping academics see their value, come up with their value proposition, and really know what makes them unique and how to pitch this to potential partners, and seeing the benefits for researchers. So on the right-hand side of this slide, this is the list I came up with just from my own experience. It is often sort of we list what we do as an office, and it is not always so clear what are the outcomes and benefits that are less tangible for the researchers. And it is really the additional education and learning and upskilling that happens through this commercialization and translation process. The industry feedback that is received is very, very important and valuable. It can influence the research direction. You do learn a lot from these conversations. You build a lot of confidence, and some of the researchers have been on so many calls with me, and I can see how they improve from that first call until the last one we had in terms of pitching their research. They improve so much. You build some really good skills through these pitching skills. You also expand your network, and you don't need me next time to contact the company. If you build a relationship through that first touch point, next time you feel free to just send them an email and say, hey, I have this new data, or I'm working on this new idea. What do you think? So you really expand your network and contacts. And it also, you can contact a company around a specific idea, but when they learn more about your capabilities, that opens up new discussions. And sometimes it may be that it goes in a completely different direction, and you start talking about something else that you never even thought about mentioning to the company as a capability. And I can say overall, you really build the confidence to approach industry and interact. You learn how to interact. So a lot of sort of intangible, less visible benefits through this process that I find very rewarding to see that it actually happens. In terms of who we interact with, we work closely with many different departments. We are part of the DVCRO, work closely with, pardon me, with the Office of General Counsel, because you can imagine we have to deal with many, many agreements, and they help with legal drafting for us. We work closely with research services and partnerships managers. We help with any sort of unique situations around intellectual property. We work closely with the incubator, with HDRO, clearly, and also when there are IP discussions around scholarships. And we work closely with corporate engagement. So you can see that internally in my job, I have a lot of stakeholders and colleagues that I have to work with. And on top of that, I face externally to many, many industry partners. So in terms of communication skills, I would say that's probably my top pick as being very, very important in this job. And in terms of impact that we see in how we measure impact, again, going back to on the bigger scale of things, of course, we look at commercialization outcomes. We want to see technologies partnered, but we also want to see them make impact. So sometimes it's not all about the royalties. It's not all about how big the dollar sign is on the deal at all. Sometimes we want to see the researcher benefit from collaborations, and we want to see them learn new skills. And also it's about kudos, it's about involvement in major initiatives, to say that you were involved and you learned from that. So these are the sort of impact measures for our office, but on a smaller scale, again, it's about recognizing the capabilities that we have and really showcasing that to industry, building relationships as well, making connections between labs and partners, and all these benefits that I just outlined on this slide are also the measure of impact of what our office does. And I thought I'd also touch upon how what we do aligns with university objectives. These are just some that are part of university objectives overall, and it's really that we need to disseminate the knowledge and ideas, create innovations and create deep partnerships, which is exactly what we do. We also want to be, as a university, recognized globally in key disciplines, and by really capturing these innovations and trying to partner them globally, this is exactly what we create. There are many strategic priorities in the framing of futures that are well aligned with our office, and this includes forming productive partnerships and collaborations, of course, and really creating that innovation nexus and making sure that we offer solutions to the world. And again, that's exactly, we capture these innovations that solve real problems and try and find partners who can make it happen for us. I think that sort of covers the main topics we had planned around my role, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any specific questions about what the role entails as well.
Yeah, good idea. I don't see anything in the chat, but if anybody wants to feed in verbally, maybe with some questions about the role at this stage, that's welcome. Maybe while people are thinking about some questions, or you can put your hand up or put it in the chat, we'll go through it as we come along. But thank you for that, Gorjana. Wow. What a great reintroduction into your role and the complexity and the process and all the things that have to happen in order to, I suppose, see licenses and patents happen. But also it's great to see that the not so tangible benefits are also appreciated as well from an impact point of view and collaboration. And the way you emphasized on your communication skills are clearly very important when you're working with so many different stakeholders.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, very dynamic, but very busy and demanding. So you really have to love this sort of work to be able to do it and enjoy it.
And yeah,
we do have a question. We do have a question. So Charlene has asked, I'm going to get my chat back up, has asked, how did you get started with this job career? So we trained, and the role sounds extremely complex, which we do know it is. And, you know, we've both talked to Gorjana quite a bit, and I think she was on your interview panel, Catherine. And so, and we have had a couple of workshops with commercialization, and we had one planned, sadly, and then it was just too difficult to do with their workload when COVID-19 happened. But yeah, so I guess we were talking, Gorjana, about, you know, some of the questions we had to guide the discussion in case we didn't get questions. And so, yeah, that whole, we're talking about your build of transferable skills that came from your PhD that then you took into the role. And I guess we've, you know, about that whole idea of using your skills, and then they improve, you put them back in your little sack and take them to the next employer and transfer them there. So could you talk about that a bit?
Yes, and I will share a slide in a minute as well, and that leads really well into what we were going to talk about in the second part. Anyway,
yes.
To really do this role, you can't just come into it trained fully at all, and everybody knows this in technology transfer. There is a lot to learn on the job. There is a lot of self-education you have to do. There is no course, a single course that will teach you everything that you need to do in this job at all. A lot of self-educating, a lot of reading, a lot of just being very resourceful and always learning and looking at things and trying to apply them to your complex problems that you have. So a lot of self-education, a lot of learning on the role, and learning every single day really comes to that. In terms of how I got here, when I was doing an undergrad degree, I also did a diploma of innovation management that was organized under the Faculty of Science, and it was the most exciting thing I have ever done. I did completely overload my units for 3 years, and I saw that there is something I can study in parallel that shows me how to apply what I'm learning in biotech and biochemistry, and what can you do with that knowledge when you discover a new gene? Okay, how can that make a difference to the world? And in parallel, I was doing this diploma of innovation management, which was teaching me about patenting and commercialization, and how to run biotech business and what it means to translate that knowledge and make impact. So I have to say that I had that training that helped me, absolutely helped me get on this path. You can always look into different sort of master's degrees of technology innovation. There are a lot more postgraduate courses now available than there were back when I was studying, if this is something that's of interest. But nothing tops the experience and on the job. So if you can find internships, short-term opportunities, even volunteering, that is where you learn. That is really where you learn. I had that training, so with the diploma as well, that helped me. But what really helped me is the networking and the connections with industry. As an undergraduate, even in my second year, I joined the US Biotech Association as a student representative for UNSW, which meant that I was going to conferences, I was volunteering there, and I was going to these committee meetings, and I was constantly meeting people from industry. And I really used that well, because I talked to them about their careers. I asked them, do I need a PhD? I didn't want to do it just because. I wanted to know, am I going to benefit from, really suffering for 4 years? And I think you will all relate to this. It's not an easy thing to just do it, just to have it. You really have to commit to that path, and it's not an easy one. And I learned through these conversations that, yes, even if you want to do commercialization and eventually you don't want to stay in the lab, you really need a PhD. And they gave me all these reasons that you associate, you talk much better with the academics, you really appreciate what they do. You can review complex science, and honors just doesn't give you that. It's not enough to really be at that level. And you really have to have that strong technical background to do any job in commercialization, no matter how business related your job is down the track. If you are still in the biotech life sciences industry, there are lots of skills that you learn on top of your technical expertise. And that's why I will share the slide now to tell you how these transferable skills help me today and every day. And don't underestimate the skills you learn in your PhD. There are so many. And I often, I hear often students say, but I only know how to do mass spectrometry. What else can I put on my CV? And when you really dig deeper, there are so many skills that you develop. You're just not even aware of them. So just write it down, think about this, spend some time thinking about this. I'll just share a screen again. Okay, so this is the list that I realized I had in my first job. When I applied for it, I used the career services at UNSW, and I was reading articles about transferable skills. So I sort of already did research at the time to think about what do I list on my sort of non-academic CV. And you can really translate. One example that I find interesting, instead of writing, I can write grants, what you can say is that you can write convincing, concise proposals with clear aims and a budget. And it's basically, it's an exercise in project management, a PhD. So if you put that instead of I can write grants, it's just a different perspective. You're really translating what you think you know into a different language, into something that sort of the world outside of academia can relate to. And so these are some of the skills that I realized helped me so much in that first job. And the reason why I got that first job in BioLink, which is a consulting for business development and licensing in biotech, was because I did an internship with them. I kept in touch during my PhD. I invited some of the people from that company to some of the career events I was organizing. So I already had that connection. And then I secured an internship, after which I stayed there for 4 years in that company, which was amazing. So let's go through this list, and I'm sure you can all relate to this. Resilience, every day. You come, the experiment failed, you just go back, the experiment or whatever research you're doing. I'm sorry to be a bit biased, I keep mentioning all the science and lab-based PhD, but there are many of you that are not lab-based. But whatever it is you're researching, there's always struggles and failures, sometimes on a daily basis. And we always get up, come in the next day, do it again, solve the problem, troubleshoot. And I had many ups and downs, a roller coaster through my PhD. And when you hit that bottom and nothing works, you come in the next day, you make a new plan, and you just do it again. So you really build resilience. Why was this important in my job at BioLink and here at Macquarie? Is because you put in a lot of effort in a project, and maybe you realize that it's not patentable, for example, or you're helping a client get a regulatory approval and it doesn't happen. So it really helps you just move away from these setbacks and just learn from failures and move on. So resilience in these jobs is very, very important. In terms of diligence and being thorough, that's why you are valued with your PhD in other kinds of jobs, because you can be very, very thorough. You're not going to miss things, because imagine planning an experiment and you just didn't plan it properly because you were not detailed enough or diligent enough to plan it properly. This is very, very valued. I can tell you, when you read documents and in my work with clients at BioLink, I just couldn't miss anything in my consulting reports because I'm giving advice and I have to be very diligent. And you really learn that by doing a literature review, analyzing other people's results, connecting the dots, coming up with conclusions. This is a great skill that you develop. I bet you're all highly efficient. There's no other way. I will let you tell you a personal story, which is that I had 2 kids during my PhD. I don't recommend it, but I'd say it's possible. And clearly that made me a superhero in time management and efficiency. This is very much appreciated in industry jobs, that you just get things done and they're just spot on and you move on to the next task. There is no time to be wasted and you all know how to do this. You all gain the ability to remain focused. Also very important in my current role, every task is time consuming and demanding. And I block times to fully focus on a task without answering 10 emails at the same time. And when you have to write your thesis and when you have to do a very long experiment and make a plan, you don't allow yourself to be distracted. This is also very valued in industry jobs. I think in the PhD, of course, there's a lot of innovative thinking, a lot of creativity and being very inquisitive and questioning status quo. Again, this is how businesses grow, is by questioning things and finding solutions, which brings me to problem solving. And I don't think I need to talk about this much, but every business needs people that can solve problems, not create them. So this is also a very, very important skill. Learning fast, absolutely. And in my role, this is a key skill. I receive something I don't know anything about. In 2 days, I've read reviews, I've made comments, I've researched it, and I already know a lot about it that I can actually look into it and assess the technology. And you all have to learn fast through your PhD, where something else comes out and suddenly you have to do use an equipment you've never used. You all learn very fast. Delivering results, of course, there's that big thesis waiting at the end that you have to deliver. And that really translates into that drive and ability to deliver results to businesses. And of course, communication skills, I don't underestimate that, and work on your communication skills. There are things you can do during your PhD that can improve these skills while you're still doing it. So one example is identify your gaps, and maybe you are good at writing a paper, but you like freak out presenting at a conference. So work on that skill. You can do that by really putting your hand up to maybe chair a seminar in your center. You know, just get that over that stage fright. If you don't think you're very good at summarizing your research in a lay language and telling your grandma what your PhD is about, put your hand up to help the marketing team put a brochure for the center and explain what all the group heads are doing. Why is that so significant? That is for maybe philanthropic society, you know, to raise funds, and it has to be in a simple language. If you think, oh, I can't do that, my advice is do it, definitely. Do it and see what you can do. I think it will be very rare that you deliver something terrible and you say, I will never write anything like this again. What will happen is that you will get out of your comfort zone because you really want to show that you can do it. You will put in a lot of work and effort and you will deliver, and you will realize you feel amazing and that you can do it. So there's something that scares you, I say go and do it. Absolutely. Just give it a go and see how you feel. If you're absolutely terrified, don't do it, but I don't think that will happen. So with communication, participate in the newsletter, maybe put your hand up to put some social media posts on the LinkedIn of the center and summarize the latest amazing paper that someone published. These things don't take a lot of time, but I think go the extra mile. put your hand up for these things. Find internships, talk to people, network. We can expand on each one of these points if you like. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Gorjana. That's awesome. Yeah, I really like the you know, the thing about chairing a seminar and, you know, doing something that you're scared to do. I mean, this is the second time I've kind of hosted, you know, with Sally, a live webinar this week, and this is a little bit out of my comfort zone. And we had one earlier this week, and I was like, I can't record this. This is our first one. So, you know, definitely get out of your comfort zone, doing it a bit more every single time. You know, in the current environment as well, you know, doing a webinar. Something very, I think, achievable. It's even more achievable. You don't have to book the room. You know, it's certainly just as we all have access to Zoom. So great advice, great opportunity to flex those communication skills. And
can I just ask something there, Catherine? Because, you know, communication skills comes up really high when you're looking at employers. You know, of course it does, because, you know, this is what, particularly once you're at the level of PhD, that's one of the big parts of your job, is going to be communicating with people, stakeholders, clients, colleagues, and so on. Sometimes people just don't really get what that means. So I guess, Gorjana, I'm interested in you talking about some of the issues you might have had when you are communicating with particularly industry partners from a university setting, that translation between, you know, the different ways they see the world, and how you've then, because you've worked in that sector as well, you really do understand it, but how you've actually bridged that gap and where you really have seen those strengths developed in communication, and how you describe those.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a bit of background that will help you put things in context. I came to Australia when I was 18, and my English was very basic, very, very basic. So I realized that's something to work on a lot. And I love languages, and I speak other languages, and I love writing. My problem was English. But because I knew I love communicating and writing and learning new languages, I put in a lot of effort into my English. And what you have to do is learn from other people. If you see something written really well, I would copy it down, actually. I used to have a little notebook, and I would write down a sentence that I absolutely loved. If I find an expression that really describes something so well, I would write it down and actually find some examples where I could use it, and I would actually use it. So when I started the consulting job, that was my biggest challenge. I was thrown down a deep end. Suddenly I was talking to clients. I had to sell the service. You know, this is why you should work with us. And suddenly you say, okay, I need preparation. So preparation is very important until you really become comfortable communicating. And of course, these days I prepare a lot less than I used to. But I used to spend the night before making notes, thinking, how can I use some keywords to describe why they should pick Firelink as a service to do their business development. And then I practiced, and I had these expressions really ready in my sleeve, you know. You have to put in the effort. For some people, it comes in naturally. My boss is, you know, English is his first language, and he's so eloquent, just amazing. And of course, he never practiced. It just comes naturally. It's his first language. He spoke so well. And you could see me just absorbing from him. Sometimes I would listen to him, he would be on the call with the client and say something so concisely in one sentence, which would take me 10, and I would write it down. I would literally write down what he said and remember it. So I was lucky to be next to someone for years who spoke so well. But read articles, read industry articles that summarize the field, for example. Or go on websites of companies that are in the area, see how they describe the work, how do they persuade their customers and clients, and just use this, literally add it to your vocabulary. But you need to think about it constantly. For me, it was critical, so I had to do it. And so for some people it comes naturally. For me, that was the biggest gap, which is why I worked so hard on it. And even today, I still write things down and kind of make a mental note. That is a very cool expression. I'm going to use that next time. And then negotiations as well. Read books on that, make notes, underline things, just work on yourself every single day. And I still have a lot to learn as well. So in terms of communicating, talk to the right people, listen to the right people, improve your language. It's practice. I think communication is talent, and you know, it helps that the language is your first language, of course. That will give you a great head start. But if you're not in that situation, put in a lot of effort, because communication is practice.
Definitely.
There's no magic wand. You just have to practice.
No. Well, and really, you've really hit on there, which I love, and I think there is a danger sometimes when you are drilling down into a particular area, is that sense of being an expert. And you can be an expert in one area, but recognise there's so many other areas. And hopefully everyone's come in to do a PhD because they have a love of learning, and so that continuation of learning throughout your life. And looking for those people, exactly, what's that saying, that don't be the smartest person in a room. And of course, you might be the smartest person in your particular area, but you're not the smartest in everything. So they're really good at that. They're really good at that. And yeah, I think that's brilliant advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got so much from that as well, Gorjana. Like, even like when you said, like, well, so many things, but I suppose the sentences, even finding that right communication tool. Yeah, I email so much now, like, and sometimes getting the tone right in an email, and you spend so much time on something, and you want to make sure it comes across well. So yeah, it's really, I think I love that idea of taking something, seeing something that works, and go, right, I can certainly use that for my own purposes.
Yes, yeah, I still have a file where I copy some of those paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
Once you copy it, it sticks in your mind a lot more, especially if you write it down. At least for me, going through my hand works better than typing it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, do this because it will really help you. Probably another point to cover is networking. I think that's really critical. I hear often researchers say, I'm terrible at networking. Again, go and try it. It's not that bad at all. And learn from people. I learned from people just by observing. You go and you see, the biggest problem for me was, how do I walk away from a conversation? And sometimes I would be stuck with one person and I just didn't know how to leave and go talk to whoever I want to talk to. So you'll observe and you will find that person that does it so well. And you just say, okay, I'm going to take that on board. That's a really good way of walking away from a conversation, for example. So go and observe, and then try it on the next group that you join. But what I wanted to say is that explore your options and find those people in your immediate network, and find those people on LinkedIn, look at their career paths and get in touch. When you get in touch, don't use a generic approach. You have to really say why you want to talk to them, because that resonates, and that's why they would be interested in talking to you. So instead of saying, hi, I'm looking for getting out of the lab and doing something else, and I'd like to have a chat, you're probably not likely to get a response. These are busy people that need to prioritize, and you probably didn't catch their attention enough. You need to say, I noticed that you were in one role and then you went into another role, and I'm considering something similar. I would really like to talk to you about how to make that specific transition, for example, or ask a very specific question to show that you are contacting that person for a reason, and it doesn't sound like you contacted 50 others. That's how you get that attention. Ask for an introduction as well. I can say that every year I introduce a lot of people, send introductory emails and referrals as well. And this works really well. So use your network, ask for someone to introduce you, and make sure you specify what do you actually want, not just a chat and a coffee. What do you actually want to learn and why, and what do you want to do? This is very important. It may be out of people's comfort zone, but again, when you know you're scared to do something, you definitely go and try it. It's not that scary, and you become better at it. And identify your gaps. Look at job descriptions of something that you want to do in 5-10 years and say, I'm good at these things, but look at that, I don't even tick any of these boxes. How can I get these skills? If you don't know, then find people in that area and ask them. That I think is very important in terms of networking and reaching out to people and learning. It's good to understand what you don't want to do as well. That's a good starting point. You know, just sort of go and strike through a couple of those. That's helpful. I'll give you an example. My husband, after his PhD in physics, he thought that it would be great to become a patent attorney. From what he heard and looked up, and then he thought, look, I have all these skills in, you know, very specific, he was in the quantum physics area, and there are a lot of filings in that growing area. But after he spoke to patent attorneys, after he had a few interviews and really had a chance to learn more about the role, he realized it's definitely not for him. He does not want to do that. Then he moved on and found a career, a completely different career that he loves now. So it's good to know what you don't want to do. So even talking to these people and learning that it's not for you is a good achievement, I think. So do your homework, be resourceful. There are so many resources out there. Just a simple Google search and you will just have a whole day of reading. So definitely be very, very proactive to do this. I looked at some of the alternative careers for life sciences, and I created a list just for this purpose of you know, I get approached a lot with these questions. What else can I do? There are lots of options. They're not hidden from you. You need to just do your homework and find them. It's all out there. These are not some mysterious roles. They exist and there are opportunities. You need to find them. And don't assume that everyone is proactive. Don't assume that everybody finds those internships. I actually think proactive people are rare. Be one of those rare proactive people. I know that you assume that everyone is going for it, and then you think, why would I be special? Why am I special to go for it? But then you realize that it's actually not true that everybody is pursuing these opportunities. So you really have to give yourself a chance. Definitely have a go and be very proactive.
Brilliant. I love that. And I think the networking one is...
Lots of questions.
And I suppose I'm just looking at the time and I'm thinking maybe we'll have a look through the chat there and see if there's anything we haven't covered.
There isn't anything there, but one thing I wanted to ask, particularly because we've decided to focus this one on an area that we felt, you know, there was a gap, Catherine and I, when we're talking about, you know, people talk about doing and becoming an academic, having an academic path, or working in a different sector, and you go, well, hang on, you can actually work in this sector in a whole range of different roles. So it's often discounted or a bit invisible, and we thought we'll bring that out and show off some of the fabulous people like Gorjana. But I guess, Gorjana, when you look at, you know, what an academic does and what you do, you know, now that people have seen what you do, surely, you know, it's so obvious that your job is so deep and broad, and it's got, you know, your curiosity is constantly being, you know, salved, and then, you know, you can explore a bit more. So it's certainly not a, you know, a secondary choice. So can you talk about that, about how, you know, that perception of PhD going into academia versus the PhD taking what we might term an alt-ac, you know, professional role within a higher education? Does that make sense?
Yes. I think you need to really try and understand yourself. See what other things interest you. I knew that I loved writing. I just had to improve a language, but I knew that, for example, in consulting and when you have to write reports and advise people on all sorts of, development parts and talking to partners, that I will enjoy that aspect of work because I knew how much I liked that and enjoyed it. So if you like communication in particular, maybe consider those kinds of jobs. Try and link your love of science with other interesting skills that you have and other strengths that you have. If you are very detailed and if you sort of read the fine print and terms and conditions and you just love reading a clause and thinking, what does this mean for me? Maybe going into a law career is good for you. Or if you pick on a word and say, well, if I use the different synonym, that would kind of change the meaning of this. And if you love playing with words when you write, again, something more along the lines of licensing and legal aspects of science careers. So try and find those strengths that can then connect the dots to a different sort of science career. I think that's where there is that sort of expectation of staying in academia and doing a postdoc, and then unfortunately the chance of becoming a professor are very, very low. So a majority of you will probably end up somewhere else. So you really need to pay attention to this and try and find your path. But I think linking your strengths and interests, if you love traveling or describing, simplifying things and marketing as well. There are PR roles, there are marketing roles. If you think you're very good at persuading people to buy something or to help you or, get people to do things for you, maybe a sales role is good. Find what you're comfortable with and use these strengths in different careers, and definitely use career services to map this out. It's really helpful exercise.
Definitely. Thank you.
Does that answer the question, Sally? I'm not sure.
I'll unmute myself. Yeah, I guess it was just looking at that pressure that sometimes is felt by PhDs to follow an academic path as if that's the only option, and others are, it's the runner-up of decisions, whereas really what you're talking about, which I completely agree with, is start with yourself. What matters to you, and it's your life, your career, so what are the things that you really get excited about? And you might have strengths or you might have areas that you need to build upon, and you can be smart, you're capable, you've done a PhD, you can learn these things. So, making sure you're in the driver's seat a little bit more is really what I'm hearing from you. And that's what I hope would happen more and more and more supervisors hopefully will shift that thinking as well.
Yes, don't feel pressured by, building you have to build your publication record and start applying for fellowships immediately, and just step back a little, spend some time, take a bit of a holiday and think about what you really want to do. I remember telling my PhD supervisor straight away, I said, I'm never going to pursue a postdoc. So I have other plans, but I'm going to absolutely give it my best for this project. So I didn't want her to think that I will do a lame job because I wasn't planning to stay in the lab. So I made sure she understands my plans, but I said I will do the best I can, absolutely, and I did. But I set those expectations. And so if you feel pushed towards a certain career or applying for fellowship, staying in the lab, feel free to say, look, I'm considering my options. And take time to step back and focus on these plans, because it's really worth it. Very, very important.
Very good. Thanks, Gorjana. I went through the chat there briefly just to see if there's anything we didn't cover, and I think for the most part we've covered a lot of the questions, maybe just from Manami, about have you found that people in industry have any negative connotation of people with PhDs, or have you found that everyone is mostly interested and accepting?
I think it's I haven't seen anything negative about it. it comes down to how you present yourself. If you believe if there's some sort of superiority for having a PhD, and then you sort of brag about it and don't want to do certain tasks because they're beyond you, then it's really the attitude that matters, not the fact that you have a PhD. But overall, if you emphasize your skills that you bring from the PhD and sort of probably downplay the specifics, you know, like mass spec and whatever, antibody isolation and things like that, downplay those a little bit, because they mean nothing to these people unless you are, you know, involved in product development, and your expertise is really important. Emphasize your other skills, and yeah, if you have the right attitude, then it's very acceptable and looked upon really positively. Yeah.
Good stuff. Manami's happy with that answer. And a lot of good feedback here from everybody, the tips and sharing your experience. We have a few more minutes just before we finish up. Firstly, just want to take the opportunity before we finish to say thanks to Gorjana. This is amazing. And thank you to everybody who's showed up today. Is there anything else anybody else wants to, and feel free to unmute for if you want for a second. You know, we'll keep going for a few more minutes, or anything further you'd like to add, Gorjana, yourself. I think there might be a lot of people popping off to their next 12 o'clock before we finish, as we normally do. So yeah, unless there's any more questions or anything further, Sally, you'd like to add?
No, just thank you so much, Gorjana. Like, we knew, we presented this to Gorjana, gave her the questions and all that, and said, we'll have a chat. And she went, oh, no, it's fine. And she's just, she is prepared very well, though, because she covered all the areas we were going to ask her, and she's just done it brilliantly. So full of admiration for you. And there's another one coming up that Catherine might want to mention.
Yes, we do. Actually, we have another one coming up on June 11th. It's in the afternoon with Dr. Brendan Hamdorf, and he'll be talking about his experiences and his role, similar to what we've done today. And I'm sure it's going to be just as good. I have to say, this has been brilliant. This is so many nuggets in everything you said, Gorjana. Really can't thank you enough. And yeah, we're getting great feedback. Wonderful speaker, Gorjana. Thanks from Jayamala. But yeah, I really look forward to working with you further in this space, and I hope everybody has a great afternoon. Thanks again. And
one other thing I'd just like to say is, when things get back to a bit, whatever normal will look like, that the commercialization office do run some workshops, which we've occasionally for HDRs, and you can access their website and learn more about this, because, you know, really, you know, it's really worth your while to understand more about commercialization and IP. And we will also be doing some things with the incubator. So when Gorjana's talked about things you might do, that's another one. Okay. So thanks again.
It's really my pleasure. Really something I'm passionate about sharing. So hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, best of luck with your PhDs.
Juliet's quickly asked something. Does commercialization offer internships?
Yes, we recently started accepting interns. And we, being such a small team, we can accept one per term. And sure, we'd look for applications, but we need some flexibility. You may want to spend a day or two with us per week for the term, and something to arrange with your supervisor. Hopefully they can see the benefits for you to do this.
We'll be in touch, so.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.